address Pastor Joe Fox and a couple of things here. It's an ongoing issue with a lot of people when it comes to moving to survival retreats, survival homesteads, any of that sort of thing. One of the reasons why I'm an advocate of groups doing this sort of a thing as opposed to individuals or individual families. It's not just a duplication of resources, but okay, how do we make a living with these people? How can people make a living? Kerodin up in Idaho and his 3% Citadel thing, a lot of people want to run him down because they don't like the fact that he's a felon. But the fact is, economically, he understands the concept much better than a lot of other people claim they do. Now, the reason I'll say they claim they do is I think they do understand the economics, but they're doing a lot of things for their own advantage, trying to gain followers and sharecroppers to their own advantage, when in fact this isn't something where, hey, we're going to try and provide sustainable jobs to people in this kind of environment, or a shared resource type thing, where this is going to be a sustainable freedom community. Kerodin's the only guy I've seen doing this with his 3% Citadel, and there's a lack of investment and involvement with that because people don't like him personally. There's a few lower profile setups that are kind of trying to do that, and then there's been a few successful ones, such as the thing around Front Site in Nevada, but there's a very high buy-in cost for that place too, very high buy-in cost at the community in Pahrump, Nevada, that's associated with the Front Site people. And so somewhere we have this whole balancing thing between the buying cost and the sustainability. It's not hard to make one of these things, especially into a retirement community with a high buy-in cost. And then the maintenance cost is, well, in order to stay here and be here, you're going to have some outside income from your retirement. Well, okay, I understand that. But when somebody's inviting those 25-year-olds to come in and say, your career, your lifestyle choice is going to be living out in our middle of nowhere place, and you're not going to join the military, you're not going to make the choices we made that got us to where we are, you're going to make other choices that we're going to direct, and then that's going to be how that goes. That's where the responsibility of leadership comes in, on, if somebody's going to follow your advice, if somebody's going to do what you say, where's the responsibility go? I had a kind of a backwoods survival thing going on in Coos County, Oregon in the early 2000s. And, it kind of gets some people around. And one of the things was some of the people were refugees from California, either refugees from the gun laws or the social situation, the economic situation to some degree. And there was this one guy, I think he was like 22, 23 years old, had done a little bit of juvenile time. I asked him why. Basically, he had defended himself when he was attacked in high school, and a group of his friends had defended themselves from attack. And because of that, they ended up with some relatively minor criminal records, which, when they disclosed that at future job interviews and other things, for whatever reason, they were told to openly disclose that, which was part of this, it was bad advice. And so what was happening is this guy moved up to Oregon, he got a little trailer, got his little spot, and all of that, and the locals were just exploiting this poor guy horribly. And I had him work for me, and he told me what was going on through this temp agency that he worked for. I had him clear weeds and stuff like that. We had kind of a barter situation. I gave him gear and stuff. But I paid him reasonably well by local standards, and one of the things that I learned was that if you pay somebody to work for you, especially, this is a third world country, the country areas out in the middle of nowhere, whatever, if you factor in whatever the local wage is and then bump it by about 10 or 15, 20%, no more than 20%, no less than 10%. You bump the local wage a little bit, you're going to get that much more loyalty out of the people, your reputation in community is going to be a little bit better. Always pay a little bit more than the locals will pay for the same work from the individual worker. When it comes to contractors, no. That contractor who wants to charge you 50 or 80 bucks an hour, and then the people putting hammer on nails are the $10 an hour guys, no. You got to hire people directly. You got to work with people directly on those sorts of things. And if there's any risk involved in the work, if there's any danger to it, you got to pay more. You have to exercise superior ethics to whatever the locals do, and usually that's not very hard. The locals have been usually get really accustomed to take advantage of people's lower social economic state, and so exploitation is the norm in those areas. And you want to let these people have a taste of what it's like to be treated right, and they'll always want to work for you. When they always want to work for you, a lot of times they're going to kind of take your side in things. But we went around, we bidded small jobs. I heard the rap from these people. There are almost no Mexicans around that area. And we found out why. It's just the locals were so cheap, even the Mexicans wouldn't go there for much. They were that cheap. And after a couple months of this, I'm trying to help this guy out. There was a union at one of the places he worked at, and he had this whole system figured out that if they could fire somebody before 90 days, then they wouldn't be allowed in the union either, and they wouldn't give them benefits and that sort of thing. And you go through all these like 80, 85-day cycles with the same employer, same temp agency. Went through them 2 or 3 times, working for me on side work, or they would have to wait 30 days before hiring them back. Now what they would tell them is, oh, we'll give you another chance after 30 days. Well, the reality is they were waiting for certain deadlines to burn off on benefits and things like that, so that they could keep denying them unemployment, keep them working when they wanted them to work, and keep them working cheap, because it was kind of a good old boy system on who got to be in the union with some of the stuff on that. So finally I told him, I said, I think the only way really getting ahead is going to be to join the military. And he did. He ended up joining the Navy. Last I heard, he was doing pretty well. So, giving young people advice, I don't want to misadvise anybody, okay? Haas USMC, makes most of his identity over the fact that he's been in the Marine Corps, and then tells people now, well, I wouldn't join the military. Well, how do you tell somebody like that? What if they're 40 years old and they don't have any other medical coverage, and, the VA would have helped them if they'd gone and done their 4 years? What about the fact that socially in the Patriot movement right now, if you're not a veteran, you're considered less of an American? I mean, that's just the reality of the perception. And I know a few guys who've been associated with the militia movement who'd never been in the military, who are highly capable people, but then, you get another guy up there who's done time in the military, they're never going to respect that guy as much. Even though he actually, at a certain point, would have easily breezed through any officer candidate program, been easily is a quality of person equal to any Delta Force officer type person I've ever met. I've met a couple, and I would say this guy's easily that great a person. But he took the advice of some mentor-style Vietnam vet people who said, oh, don't join the military, they're not real patriots anymore, blah, blah, blah. Well, in that respect, in a whole shake-up in the whole militia circles of these guys, he doesn't get the respect. I mean, a lot of people, they just don't respect this guy because he didn't do his time in the military, even though he's a very capable person. Same guy's lived out in the rural areas, and he's actually worked on kind of a contract basis with some of the special operations type stuff, but they, when it came down to it, and Iraq stuff and all that, it was like, okay, well, what units were you in? Didn't matter how competent this guy was, it was what units were you in. Oh, okay, well, this one, that one, no, that doesn't count. We can't put your name on a contract and pay you this much if you haven't had this kind of pedigree. And I knew a guy who had Vietnam-era Special Forces pedigree. On paper, he's getting calls. This guy was dying from Agent Orange. I mean, he's got spots all over his skin. He carried an oxygen tank around. And they were like, listen, we need you in Baghdad because we have to have this percentage of Special Forces people on our contract. We'll set you up at the hotel. You'll never leave the hotel. We have great medical care out there, but we need you in country with your name on the contract so that we could say that you're supervising this operation. And this guy's literally dragging an oxygen tank around, is 2 steps from his deathbed because of Agent Orange. I mean, that's just how reputations work with that stuff.